Greetings, great things. It is Q Talks once again, and we are back with another episode of Black Swan Theory podcast. Today's episode, we are going to be discussing, and I am bringing to you guys the topic of how healing changes your relationships, right? So, healing doesn't just change you, it changes how you relate to everyone around you. As always, I have some notes that I will be referring to if you see me glancing downwards. But essentially, this is going to be quite it kind of leads on from the previous podcast episode because the previous episode was talking about, when you change, when you feel like you kind of no longer recognize yourself or you're no longer the same person after changing. And this is leading on from that, how your relationships change, right? Because as we know, or as we should know by now, when we shift internally, our external circumstances also shift, right? They shift to reflect what is happening inside of us. So when we make the decision to heal, right, and we are no longer operating in a previous version of ourselves, the unhealed version of ourselves, or just the version of ourselves that didn't know better, right? Because sometimes healing is a process that takes time, and sometimes you're not healing from something specific, you are just becoming more yourself. Life experience gives wisdom, right? Life experience brings wisdom. That is a quote from Haile Selassie. So, what that means is that there's a lot of things that when we are younger or just in earlier stages of our life, of course, we're not going to have the awareness. We're not going to know because we have not experienced life enough, because we don't have enough information to go off. And sometimes that causes us, as well as trauma, and negative experiences, but sometimes it's just as simple as a lack of knowledge, right, of ignorance. Sometimes this causes us to entertain things that don't really suit us, you know repeat certain patterns that we know are not maybe beneficial to our long-term growth, and use certain things to cope that we feel like are healing us, but they're actually more like a way that we are numbing ourselves, right? So when we heal and it impacts our relationships, right? Things start to look and feel different. Dynamics start to change. This can look like conversations not hitting the same, having less tolerance for old patterns, patterns that we were once very comfortable with, patterns that once maybe even brought us a sense of relief. We find that it is no longer the case. We also can find ourselves feeling misunderstood when we are setting boundaries, right? And this happens especially because of outgrowing certain roles, like choosing to be the peacemaker or the people pleaser or the problem solver in certain dynamics. When you start to heal and you start to identify with a version of yourself that is not playing out a certain persona to be received well, to be recognized, when you start to set certain boundaries, right, that people are not used to you having, this can change the way that you relate to each other. But this is because when we heal, our internal standards start to shift. They no longer align with, like I said, this version of ourselves that did not know, or this version of ourselves that was broken, that was fragmented, right? And that was resonating with things from a broken place, from a fragmented place. When you start to heal and you start to become whole with yourself and with the idea of yourself that you want to hold on to and that you want to carry forward, your worth, your sense of your own worth begins to shift. And this also shifts what you choose to interact with and entertain outside of yourself. Because the things that once felt normal to you no longer feel like that. Relationships that were built on an old version of you that once, like I said, made you feel safe, made you feel stable, made you feel understood, suddenly those qualities are no longer there. And that can be scary, right? Because you feel like, how, what do I have? Like, if I'm now different and these people don't know how to accept me being different, or these people aren't willing to change themselves in the same way as me, it can cause you to start to feel like you're not sure what you do have, And it can cause you to start to question your own healing because, yes, it's good, but obviously, as humans, we like comfort, we like stability, we like familiar, ooh, familiar. You know what I'm saying? Familiarity. We like things that are familiar to us. So when we are now challenging ourselves to entertain things that are unfamiliar, to step out of what is familiar, it becomes shaky. It becomes shaky for us, right? But always remember that, like I said previously, when you change internally, external dynamics are naturally going to shift. Every action has a reaction, right? So for me, I have had many moments where I noticed my relationships changing. And a lot of that is because I noticed that I was no longer willing to continue to show up in a way that I previously did. I was no longer willing to have a certain idea of myself that was causing me to act a certain way with people, right? Or to have a certain perception in my relationships and to be okay with certain things. Once I realized that, you know what, I am overcompensating here. I am giving more than what I can get here, you know? I am allowing this to impact my worth when it actually has nothing to do with me. Once you start to shift certain ideas and identities like that, these relationships change. And they don't change maybe in a negative way, but because you're no longer playing a certain type of role with certain people, you just don't do that anymore. And like I said, if these people aren't also willing to shift or to understand, then things just become what they are. And that's okay. Sometimes we feel guilty. We feel guilty for evolving and for shifting and for changing, especially when we're not sure how people outside of us are going to take that, if they're going to take it personal, if they're going to think something about us, think that we think that we're all of a sudden, bigger than the program. It has nothing to do with that. When you remember and you always consider that you're doing this for yourself, right? You're doing this for your own refinement. You are considering your own betterment overall as a whole, then you stop feeling guilty, right? Because how can you feel guilty for doing what's best for you? Yes, sometimes we don't want to have an effect on others, but at the end of the day, it's either you have an effect on others or they have an effect on you. And we always have a choice in this matter, right? So it's up to us to choose what what results we want. It can feel isolating, like I touched on before, because again, when you suddenly change, when you when everything that you used to hold on to and used to use to identify yourself, right? Your habits, your circumstances, your environments, your relationships, when these things are no longer something that you resonate with, something that you feel the need to hold on to, it can feel isolating because you find yourself in a space of not knowing what fits with you, right? Or you're learning what works for you, but you're knowing that these previous things, these previous people and places, they don't fit with you. In the sense of feeling alone and feeling isolated, remember again that you have yourself, and that is one of the best, that is the best and most valuable thing that you can have and hold on to, especially the version of yourself that you're creating that you know is for your greater good. What can be more worth it than that, right? Because that's something that I came to terms with. It's like, regardless of what is happening outside of me, I have to have a strong grip on myself, and I have to have a respect for myself. And that is only going to come from the relationship that I have with myself, the way that I pour into myself, and the growth that I'm willing to ask of from myself, right? Regardless of how that impacts anything or anyone outside of me. Once you get to this place, it doesn't, it won't bother you as much. You might still have moments where you are concerned about the people outside of you, but again, what is it to have the world, to have everything and not have yourself? You know, I wouldn't recommend it. So, as always, and one of the main things that I want you guys to take away from this is that healing will reveal to you which of your relationships were built on survival, right? There are so many things that we do to survive. And especially when you come from a place of trauma, when you've overcome certain things, when you've had to be your own advocate for a long time, when you start to realize that certain relationships were only there, like I said, to soothe you, even though they maybe weren't actually the healthiest or the most conducive for you, you start to realize that there's a version of myself that was just trying to survive, right? Just trying to make it through. And then there's a version of myself that wants more, that knows I can have more. And that's the version that I want to step into. And in order to step into that, I have to let go of the little things that I'm hanging on to just to survive and to make myself feel better and ignore the actual things that I need to do to be better. There's a difference between feeling, just trying to feel better temporarily, and in progressing yourself to become better eventually, gradually, but certainly. So, healing does not ruin relationships, it reveals them. It reveals them for what they are. It reveals what roles people played for you, what role you played for them, and what roles you're willing to play for each other moving forward, right? As always, this community, this space is somewhere where you will always be welcome, every version of you. As you heal and you grow, I want you to always come back here and know that I am here for you and that I am going to accept you, encourage you, and grow alongside you, right? Not everybody can meet the healed version of you immediately. Sometimes when we change and we grow, we want acknowledgement from external circumstances. We want our friends, our family, our jobs, or people around us to realize and acknowledge what we've overcome what we've had to deal with, what it's taken for us to be who we are today. But again, sometimes all of that is for you. It's not about the people outside of you. And as much as you want to share it with them, as much as you want to motivate and inspire them, or like I said, you want approval or acknowledgement from them, sometimes it has nothing to do with them because it's about you. And this version of yourself is for you more than it is for anyone else, right? It will naturally impact your relationships with others and they will naturally see the shift, but you're not doing this for others, you're doing it for you. So when you find that growth creates distance, remember that this distance is what will come before the alignment that also comes from the growth. You may feel distance from people and things that you're familiar with now, but remember that there is an alignment coming. There are other people coming, other things, other circumstances, environments, situations as a result of the growth that you are doing within. So don't give up, don't stop. And last but not least, the right connections will evolve with you. Okay? So, as always, I truly, really hope that this resonates in some way. And I would love to hear your own experience with healing and how it has changed and impacted your relationships. This is a safe space for you to talk, and I will always respond. I will always be here to listen to you. If you find that your relationships are starting to feel different as you heal, just remember that it doesn't mean that something is wrong. It simply means that you are becoming someone new and someone that's worth it for you. Take care, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.